Welcome, everybody. I'm Titus Herman. I'm the CEO at Southeastern Guide Dogs. I'm delighted that you could be with us today. And in a few moments, we will meet Taya Kyle, who was here last year to meet her new best friend named Norman. Taya and Norman's match was sponsored by the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay through the Charles W. and Iona A. Mathias Fund. The Community Foundation of Tampa Bay is represented here today by Matt Spence, VP Community Impact. Matt, please extend our grateful thanks to the foundation and to everyone there. And we appreciate all of our supporters who make what we do possible. Southeastern Guide Dogs does not receive government funds, and instead we rely 100% on the generous support of private donations. 34 years ago, Southeastern Guide Dogs was a small two-bedroom home with one trainer and 3 dogs. And over the last 34 years, we've grown quite a bit, and we have graduated almost 3,000 teams that have gone on to live full and independent lives thanks to their guide dogs and service dogs. My dog saved my life. That is a phrase we have heard over and over again. So these dogs not only transform the lives of the recipients, but in many times save their lives. Last June, a very special dog named Norman fulfilled his calling as a wonderful emotional support dog for Taya and her family. As many of you know, Taya is the wife of U.S. Navy SEAL Chris Kyle and the author of the New York Times best-selling book, American Wife. Through her own losses, Taya recognizes the suffering all of us face and inspires people to persevere despite their human frailties. Following the tragic death of her husband, Chris, who was the author of the New York Times best-selling book and Academy Award-winning motion picture, American Sniper, Taya has served as the executive director of the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation. She's a frequent speaker at many national events. She's a proud mother and lives in Texas with her family. Taya, we appreciate you coming here today to share your experiences with Norman. And everybody, please join me in a warm welcome of applause for Taya Kyle.
Hello. Well, thanks for coming. I appreciate you showing up here today. So you can tell from the pictures, if you're looking at them, that this is not Norman, but this is a very special ambassador dog from Southeastern Guide Dogs. His name is Chris, and apparently he was named after Chris, my husband. He's always emotional. He's beautiful. His coloring is even similar to my Chris, so, you know, it's kind of meant to be. So he was intended to go with somebody who needed his help, full-time service dog, but he has hip dysplasia, I guess, and so he's instead going to be a wonderful comfort dog for a family that works with Southeastern Guide Dogs, Jennifer and her family. So I can attest to the fact that he will create a ripple effect out there that's going to be well worth his time and training. I believe in the ripple effect. I know most people have heard of that term, but really the ripple effect, as I think of it, I take it a little bit further and go science on it. And that's you throw that rock into a pond, and it creates the ripples that we all know about. But eventually you don't see the ripples anymore. But the scientific fact is that that energy goes on. It just transforms into something else that we never know about. And I think that's kind of a beautiful thing to remember with Southeastern guide dogs. These dogs will never know. We know the original person that gets it. We know they have a need in their life that this dog is going to fulfill. But what we don't know is there's a ripple effect that goes on well beyond that. I also know that everybody in this world suffers. Every single person suffers. We know that trouble is coming. It's coming to our doorstep. We can count on that. For our veterans, they sign up and know that they're going to put their life on the line. Chris used to always say that they sign a blank check to the United States of America, and it's for a price up to and including their life. They do it happily. And a lot of them, like Chris, feel like going out on the battlefield is a wonderful way to go. If they die for their country, they are all in. What we're seeing now, though, is there are a lot of guys who, through modern technology and science and medicine, aren't dying on the battlefield, thank God. But they are coming back with severe injuries. And tragedy is at their door in ways that we can't even imagine. And I know that in my life, I can tell you when tragedy strikes, I always have a choice. And it's struck more than once. Most people know the biggest strike that I experienced, and that was with the loss of my husband and my children's father. But there have been a number of other things that I've had to overcome too. And I know with every time that something comes to me, I have a choice to be hateful and bitter and hate this life, hate the world, be bitter about the things that are happening, or I can be stronger and more faithful. And so far, I've been able to choose stronger and more faithful every single time. And my faith has shown me that while evil exists, God has a promise to all of us that he will bring beauty through the ashes of your life. You just have to hang on. I think the neat thing about these dogs is they help you hang on, number one. They help you in the way that you can stop when anxiety comes around and you feel like the world is closing in on you. You can be grounded just by touching them. You get the unconditional love. You get the support of knowing that there's something or someone that lives and breathes by you that you can count on, who won't betray you, who won't disappoint you, who won't let you down. That's huge. And then you also know that there was a group of people who cared enough to put their time and energy into bringing you this gift. And that is a huge thing. We work with a lot of veterans in our foundation work too, and we see that it's not just the fact that somebody came forward with a gift. It's exemplified in this dog, but knowing that so many people came behind it to bring you this dog, this gift, that's huge for not just me, but a lot of people who receive a gift like this or who work with different foundations and see that beauty through the tragedy of their lives. They know that it's not just one person and not just one gift. It's all of you who come in, some volunteers, some paid, to bring this gift to them. It matters a whole lot. And I can tell you my experience with guide dogs in general didn't start with just Norman. You know, I had my good friend Ryan Job. He had a guide dog and he was blinded in battle. And he had an incredibly wonderful experience with Trey, who is his guide dog. Everybody loved Trey. I learned a lot about not touching someone's dog when they had a vest on through my experiences with Ryan. I wanted to touch Trey all the time because he was amazing. And then, of course, Marcus Luttrell, everybody knows that he got his guide dog through Southeastern Guide Dogs. And Rigby was my first experience after Chris died, having total anxiety, being very nervous, putting a smile on my face so nobody would know it, and being a train wreck inside. And Rigby, when he was off leash and Marcus was in a safe environment with all of our friends, he would just let Rigby go around. And man, I tell you, 9 times out of 10, Rigby had his head on me somewhere, whether it was my lap or my stomach or something. And I just thought Rigby was the nicest dog and we got along so well. And then I found out after some time, you know, when Melanie told me, actually Rigby can sense who has the most sort of emotional turmoil and he'll gravitate toward that person. I was struck by that because I thought, you know, I'm putting on such a good show and everybody can see that I'm just fine. But these dogs know that you're not fine, and they know when you're broken, and they know when you need comfort. And I can't tell you what a gift that is to have somebody or something that you know isn't going to be 5 feet away when you need them. I told a story last night that was kind of my breaking point, and that is that I'd always have somebody with me at events, and I knew that they were on my side. I knew I could call out to them if I ever needed them. But I'll tell you, when somebody that was supposed to be by my side and helping me if I had any situation that was emotional or I was going to break down and start crying, if they would get 5 or 6 feet away from me, I would panic because I would know that, okay, I'm on my own again. Sorry, I'm crying. Obviously, it was very painful and kind of scary and freaked me out because I'm a very independent person. But to be in an environment where I felt that alone scared me. And I'd be in crowds of people and they would say, oh, I'm sorry. They could tell maybe something was happening. My bottom lip would start shaking. I'd be embarrassed. I'd want to run out, but people expected me to be there and meet and greet. And they would say, oh, do you mind if I just get a picture real quick? Or can I just tell you this story? Or can I, of course, they're nice people. I wanted to do that and be there for them. But inside I was dying. And that was about the time that I called Bobby Newman and Southeastern Guide Dogs and said, is there any way? I hate the idea of taking a dog that another veteran could use. I'm embarrassed at the fact that I might actually need something more than I can bring to the table myself, but I think I'm at that point. And so that's when I was introduced to Norman, and I came out here, and I got to experience firsthand what it was like to have that incredible experience of a dog who's there just for you, who isn't going to walk 5 or 6 feet away, just to know that if I needed something else to talk about besides myself or my pain, there was Norman. We could always talk about Norman, and people love to do that. And my kids benefited greatly from him too. So I think it's a stretch for somebody to start out with a guide dog, a goal of having a guide dog for people who can't see. That's beautiful. But then Southeastern Guide Dogs took it one step further and decided to serve the people who put it all on the line for us. These guys who come back so injured and so broken, emotionally and physically. And they gave this opportunity to have this assistance for a dog. And then it took it one step further, and they brought it to people like me, Gold Star families, people like my children, who have issues that most people would never know about. And my kids are the happiest people. They have a strong foundation in faith. They're strong. But we have these little undercurrents of things that happen that no amount of counseling is going to fix. And one of the things is my daughter has a hard time sleeping at night sometimes. Hey, Chris, do your job. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so usually I don't cry this much, but anyway, that was her father was killed, and she didn't know until the next morning. So anyway, I think sometimes that residual effect of going to bed, when she found out the next morning, she knew that it had happened the day before. And so sometimes going to sleep alone, there's this undercurrent of what might I find out in the morning. And that's something we just kind of figured out recently. I just thought she was a normal kid who maybe didn't want to sleep by herself, and she would end up in bed with me a lot, which is great, But I also knew it was important for her to have that independence, to be able to sleep on her own. And so Norman, or Normie, as McKenna called him, please don't use her name, by the way. I never use her name. He sleeps with her every night. He jumps up on the bed. She's happy. Thank you so much. She's so happy, and we have Norman to count on. He brings healing in ways that we never could have predicted. When I first got him, that's not something I could have come to you and said, hey, I need this dog for this purpose. And I think that you can know when you give one of these beautiful dogs to a family or a veteran that you'll probably never know the ripple effect that happens. You'll probably never know what kind of energy that dog brings to the family, to the friends of the family, what healing comes about from these dogs. And I think there's the testament to that is the way that Southeastern Guide Dogs has grown. You have phenomenal people like Titus working hard to help it grow, but you also have the examples of these dogs. I can guarantee you that Chris, being an ambassador dog, is going to go out and help Southeastern Guide Dogs grow more, because we all struggle, and we all have that moment of whatever it is of healing that we're going to get from this dog. I mean, he's going to be around people. Like, I have Norman, a friend of ours, had back surgery, and he was having a hard time. And we just brought Norman over for a little bit, and sure enough, he crawled up in the bed and comforted this guy who had surgery and gave him something else to think about besides the pain that he was experiencing with his back. We take Norman to church with us, and we have one of the great things about the church that we go to is that they have a lot of love for foster children and adopting kids with a lot of different needs into the church family. through their families who have adopted them. And so Norman goes, and we've got a broad spectrum of kids with a lot of different issues. And Norman goes in, and they love him. You know, he brings a lot of healing. My daughter takes him in with her, but he brings a lot of healing to a lot of people just in that small environment. So I could go on, but I won't. I appreciate your time, and I just want to tell you that if you ever doubt the value that Southeastern Guide Dogs is bringing with these dogs, I hope you'll remember my story and know that it's not just the traditional people that you might think of needing dogs. It's people like me who have gotten tremendous value, and you are fighting for this country too. When you help by helping a warrior, you're doing so much good. We have 1% of the population that serves on the traditional battlefield. There's 99% of us that have a warrior spirit. And we can bring our warrior spirit with our gifts to the table. And for the people whose gift is training dogs or loving on veterans or loving on people in need, that's your gift. You bring it to the table, and it's a warrior spirit that you're bringing forward. I hope you know that you're just as much in the fight as the warriors who have their boots and guns on the ground. So thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for helping our country and doing it.
Thank you, Taya. And if you wouldn't mind staying up there, please raise your hand if you have a question, and I will come to you. We'll start here.
Oh, you're going to hold it. Okay. What has made you decide to become the face of this and to continue talking to people?
Yeah, well, I think there's no way I could help but give back when I got a dog like Norman. He was such an incredible gift, and I did feel like that, you know, I wasn't the traditional person to receive a dog, and I was uncomfortable in a way taking that gift that they could have given to somebody else, and they assured me they had plenty to get to the people that they needed dogs to go to. And so if I can give back and help give my testimony for people so they know what a value it is, I want to do that. I would love to see more veterans get these dogs, because I know that when Titus says they're saving lives, it's no joke. It really does mean something, and people are understanding that more and more. And so if I can help get the word out, I want to do it.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Wow, okay. Was there a moment for you that when you had Norman or looked at Norman that you realized, you know, everything's going to be okay? And can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, my experience was different because I really was very uncomfortable with getting the dog. I also thought it might be admitting to people that maybe I had needs that I didn't really want to admit, or that I had anxiety I didn't want to admit to. But coming to this campus, and I remember the first time I saw Norman, and I broke just about every rule that there was. You know, he's supposed to sleep on the floor. From night one, Norman was in the bed with me, and so I'm not the exemplary recipient for sure. But I think that from day one, I'd wake up and I'd pet his ears. It got me outside. So if I was traveling a lot and I was in hotel rooms, it just gave me that moment to breathe and get outside while he did his business. And I don't know that I had one exact moment other than the one when I first met him, and I felt his ears. His ears are a big thing to me. They're just very comforting and soft, and they have a soulful part of them. And I'll tell you that Norman still, even though he's shared with the family, he follows me in every room I go in, and he curls up, and he just knows when to be there. There's times where he's with the kids and he's playing and he's doing his thing, but usually when I'm alone and I'm working, he's curled up right under the desk, and usually when I'm working, it's something kind of emotional. And so I think there isn't maybe just one impactful moment. They're just a series of moments that I feel very connected.
This initiative that you have is wonderful, but as you mentioned, there's a great need out there for a lot of veterans. What do you see as being done on the federal or the state or the local level to see what more can be done to get these dogs into the veterans' hands?
What more can be done to get the dogs into the veterans' hands? I think really it's a matter of spreading the word. You talk a little bit about government. I'm a big believer that there's no bureaucracy in the world that will ever bring the heart to the table that an organization like Southeastern Guide Dogs can. We as private citizens can do such a better job than any bureaucracy ever could. So I'm a big believer in supporting organizations like this. They're private, they're heartfelt, they can do things outside of the rules where government agencies maybe can't, and they're limited by all their rules and regulations. And when I say outside of the rules, I mean they use their hearts and their minds, and they find the people who need it, even if it's outside of their regulations, and they're there to serve in the first place, so they serve. I think it's just spreading the word is a really big deal.
How important isn't that organizations like this one aren't just here for veterans, but also for veterans' families, because you guys go through so much too.
We do. You know, there is a growing awareness that it's not just the veteran who serves, it's the whole family who serves. And most family members like me don't want the attention, they don't need the attention. They are quietly doing it in the background because they just love somebody. You know, I didn't get into a military marriage because I was so gung-ho about the military. I just loved Chris. And I tell people all the time when they thank me for our sacrifice, and I would have done anything with him. Anything. And he chose to do the military life, and I loved him, and I did it. And I think that's something that people can remember about these families is they love each other enough to be in it together and to do it together, and they suffer together. They suffer independently, and they're not doing it for any payback. They're just doing it because they love somebody and they wanted to have a family with somebody and they wanted to make it work even in the hard times. So to support them, I think is a really beautiful thing because they're not asking for it, but just like anybody else in the world who's suffering, to be loved by somebody else, cared for, be recognized, be understood is a really big deal. I've also understood with the movie American Sniper, and even with American Wife, that was one of the reasons why I wrote it. There were so many wives out there who said, I never knew anybody else understood my story because they suffer quietly. And there are neighbors of military families who have said, I had no idea, is this really what it's like behind the scenes? And it is. And so they're coming to the table and kind of loving them through it. And it's making a really big difference for these people who never ask for a payback, they never ask for a reward, but just knowing that other people get it, love them, and are there to support them makes a huge difference. I can't overstate what a difference it makes to these families.
Could you tell us about the causes that you've taken on since Chris's death, and why did you choose to get out in the forefront with that?
Well, I think, for me, Chris was out there doing a lot of good things, and he was just kind of on this upward swing of what he was prepared to give the world, and he was the reluctant celebrity, if you will. He never thought of himself that way, and he didn't want to be that. He never even wanted to write American Sniper. He only did it because other people were going to write it about him. And it was just a really beautiful thing for me to see how many blessings there were in the world. I remember having a conversation with him. He had a hard time knowing that he got out of the military. He felt like he let his country down in doing so. And I remember saying to him, babe, do you realize that you're in a different position now? You are serving this country so well. And he looked at me and he thought, you think so? And I said, yeah, it's just a different way, but you are blessing a lot of people, a lot of veterans who needed him. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but when I saw that and I saw the response from people and somebody took him physically from us, I vowed to myself that you can't take his spirit. I will not let you. And that's part of my personal drive, I think, is to say that, yes, evil exists and evil actions can take someone from you, but you can keep that spirit of goodness alive. You can be that beacon of light that they were in this world and carry it forward. So I'm very driven to do what I can for military families, military marriages, first responder marriages. Chris loved his friends who were policemen, and they're having such a hard time right now. Anything I can do to bring that light to the military world and the first responder world helps me feel like I'm doing what he can't do right now. I'm doing it to honor him. And I'm doing it because I've seen firsthand what it's like to have that beauty through the ashes of my life, and I want to pay it forward and do that for other people.
Well, what's next? What other initiatives do you see coming, using Norman and in your efforts? What's next for you?
Well, I have the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, which I'm hesitant to bring up because I'm really here for Southeastern guide dogs. Even though I am wearing the sweater, which I normally wouldn't wear, but I realized I brought mostly T-shirts, and I felt like I should be a little more dressed up than that, and this is kind of what I had. But, that with our foundation, we're very passionate about helping the marriages. Our mission is to honor God and country by serving the marriages of those who serve in the first responder and military communities. So I know for sure that's it. Other than that, my biggest goal is to be the best mom that I can be, friend, daughter, and I have this feeling that although I have a lot of goals that I'm working on, and I have some different projects that I'm working on with HarperCollins, who's the publisher of the book, and different TV series with American Wife, and things that I hope will bless other people, I'm very cautious now to say that I don't have plans. I just have goals, because I realize that, you've all heard that, what does God laugh at? Our plans. And I've really experienced that. I used to be such a planner and want to plan so many things, and I realized that life is just too unpredictable. So I try not to plan anymore, but just have goals, and hopefully I'll just be, of use to people as much as I can be and be the best mom I can be.
Does anyone have another question for Taya? Yes, I'm coming.
You're loud enough, you could probably just...
Yeah, the whole world has obviously got to know Chris as a veteran and a military man. Can you talk a little bit about who he was behind closed doors, a man out of the uniform, so to speak, just as he was as a husband and father?
Yeah, I definitely can do that. And I did a lot of that in American Wife, because I felt like there were so many people who, like you, knew the warrior, but sensed that there was a whole lot more to the man, and I wanted to share that as a way to honor him too. But Chris was humble to his core, and I loved that about him from the very first time that I met him to the rise of American Sniper. It didn't change who he was, and people used to always say it was disarming meeting him, because they'd think, oh, okay, here's this, Navy SEAL, and he's a sniper, and what must he be like? And he was disarmingly kind. He gave people his attention 100% when he was talking to them. He loved children. He was very romantic. He's a guy who would, I think it was November before he was killed, sent me a dozen red roses, even though we were together all day on Saturday, but he had them delivered just with a note that said, just because. He was just a very loving man. He had tickle fights with the kids every night. And no, I say every night, and I really mean that, almost every night. I mean, to be totally factual, I'm sure there were a handful of nights where they didn't do that, but that was kind of the thing. He'd come home and decompress, and it would be that fun running around the house dad with the kids. And he also had a high standard for them on respect, looking someone in the eye, shaking their hand from the time they were little. And as a complete person, I just have never met anybody, I don't think I ever will, who was so capable of so much and so incredibly humble, self-effacing humor, and just had a genuine care and concern for people. I mean, we lived in this smaller town, and we'd have tornadoes come through and rip up, our yards and our trees. And he was the guy who called his friend and said, hey, grab your chainsaw, let's go out and see who needs some help. And he'd go out and, help people that were blocked in by trees that had fallen over, some elderly folks that couldn't get out or get the debris out of their yard. He'd help with that. And he just had a heart for service. It's just who he was. People that knew him from the time he was in school, he was always sticking up for the little guy. He was known as he coached, my son was playing baseball, and he was the guy that would look for the littlest kid on the team that was having the hardest time learning to throw, and he'd get on his knees and demonstrate and help him, and had this big belly laugh. He was always laughing even through the hardest times. And, one of my favorite things about him is that we would have so many things that would happen in life, whether it was friends' funerals or friends who were injured or just trying to get through our own stresses of the service life. And we had a way of laughing at ourselves and laughing at life that was my saving grace, really. He was very funny, very easy to laugh with, even in his hardest times.
How did the movie change you?
I hope it never does, and I hope it really hasn't, honestly. I feel like it was Chris and I always thought that American Sniper wasn't just our story. It was sort of every veteran story, every military story. And I think that the success of the movie is a testament to that it wasn't just our story. There are so many people that have come out of that movie and said that they've talked to their spouse for the first time in 25 years about things that they just buried long ago, veterans. And we had some who were not getting out of their house, who it was one of the first times that they'd got out of their house to go see the movie. Just interesting, same the ripple effect that I think of. So have I changed from the movie? I hope not. And in one thing, I guess, if I was to look for something that has changed in me, it's just more of the drive to help more people realize that they're not alone, because I've seen the impact on people knowing that by having that story out there, they're not alone. They don't need to be ashamed, and that they're not the only ones whose marriage is having a hard time. They're not the only one who has a hard time with that back and forth yo-yo effect of severe combat and coming home. And so hopefully the only way that I've changed is just to be more driven to do more to get the story out for people who can be healed by it.
Anybody else? Am I missing anyone? Well, we're a little early. I'll just say thank you, Taya, so much for your generosity and for giving us your time and wonderful story. And thank everyone for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Ruth Lando, and we're here at the incredibly beautiful new Bar Paul Hurst Student Center at Southeastern Guide Dogs in Palmetto. And I am with a very special person. This is Susie Wilburn.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Susie is our Director of Admissions and Graduate Services at Southeastern Guide Dogs. Susie, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I'm actually the people side of things at Southeastern Guide Dogs. So anyone that wants to apply for a dog or is interested in learning about the types of dogs we provide for service, that's what my team handles. So that's what I get to do every day.
That's pretty special, and you've also gotten to do that for yourself because there's someone here at my feet that you can tell us about.
That's right. This is Carson. He is my guide dog. I am visually impaired. I have a visual disease called Stargardt's disease, so I have no central vision. So when I look in front of me, I can't see. So Carson and I were matched just over 5 years ago. He is my first guide dog, and he has really transformed my life into a life that I can be proud of and a life I can live freely without having to have a human guide with me all the time. He's a lifesaver, and he's pretty special.
You've often said that if it became a choice between someone else and Carson would win. Who is that someone else?
Well, I'm always asked if I had to choose between my husband or my dog, what would I choose? And I would find a good home for him. And I'm not talking about my dog, and my husband knows that. So really to explain what Carson has done for my life is he's turned me into a person who loves to wake up every morning and actually be a human and get into my community and be a part of the world again, and that's what he lets me do every day.
That's very special, and here at Southeastern Guide Dogs, we change lives with the dogs that we provide to people at no cost. And some of those dogs are not for the visually impaired, though. Can you talk a little bit about the other services that we have for veterans in particular?
Sure. We have a service dog program that places a dog with a veteran who's been diagnosed with service-related post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And those dogs are especially trained to mitigate the symptoms of PTSD. And what we're finding with our veterans is they're letting them out of their homes. They're letting them reduce the amount of medications they take. They're letting them be what they consider normal again. These dogs are super special, calm dogs. They're there for an emotional part too, and it really is, it transforms their lives. Some of them haven't been out of their homes for 10 years. They haven't been able to go to their son's baseball game, and now with the dog next to them, they feel confident enough, and they can get out there and they can be part of their family again, and they can reconnect with their wives and their husbands and just be a part of life again, which is great.
And there are other special dogs that we provide as well, and it's kind of a newer part of what we do. Today we're going to be having a news conference with Taya Kyle, who is the wife of the slain sniper, American sniper, Chris Kyle, who was tragically killed by, not in service, but by a friend. And it was incredibly difficult for her to come back from that, and for her family. She was provided an emotional support dog by Southeastern Guide Dogs, and I understand that you actually had a big part to play in that.
It was a very exciting time when we learned that Taya was interested. With this golden retriever in our kennels, that he's pretty unique, and he really does just want to give somebody a shoulder to cry on or a paw to hug. And Norman was the perfect dog for Taya. He had the energy level that would be okay with her kids, but he had the soft side that he could just allow her to hug him when she needs that time alone. And I think I know from an emotional side, Carson guides me, but he also gives me a support system that a human can't provide for me. It's unconditional love. It's an ear that is always open and a mouth that's normally closed. And I think Taya will find that and has found that in Norman as just a buddy that she can rely on, that is non-judgmental and always there, just filled with love and wagging tails and licks. And sometimes that's what somebody needs just to make it through a day.
It's going to be very exciting to hear Taya's personal story today, but thank you for sharing yours with us and for all the great work you do at Southeastern Guide Dogs. Thanks, Susie.
Always my pleasure.